This is F.D.Recovery, where we interview addicts and alcoholics.
Our aim is that through this podcast, we might help you on your journey of recovery.
Thank you for listening. Hello, this is Frank with F.D.Recovery. You are listening to the Weekly Intention. And this week's Weekly Intention is humor. But before we dive into humor and talk a little bit about that, we are going to recap on last week's spiritual principle / topic, which was wisdom. So, the whole wisdom piece of the scenario, the way it worked in my life and in my recovery was, it's pretty short and sweet, right? One thing I've learned with wisdom is that it's basically everything you've learned and all your experience put in responsible action, right? Most people can talk a good game. It's like this, right? There's most people that run around and say, hey, well, listen to me. I got the best advice in the world. Go ahead, take it, because I'm not really using it, right? So that's the whole thing, is most of us are running around with all this acquired knowledge, and are we really ever using it, right? It's easy to tell somebody how to do it, and you'll have an armchair quarterback with pretty much anybody out there that whatever it is, everybody all of a sudden expert, you bring it up, right? But wisdom, right, is taking that knowledge and putting it into practice, right? All your experience, all your your hardships that you go through, different scenarios, you start putting things into play, you start connecting with the truth about experiences that you've been through. And you start choosing different patterns, right? That's the big thing with me, is that pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is so key to wisdom. Until I can figure out that, I got to connect the patterns and notice the patterns when they show up. Right. Because sometimes I block myself by my short sight, right? And my unwillingness to humble myself at times, my pride, ego, all that. It blocks me from the blessings or the lessons, right? So the important piece to all the whole wisdom thing is learning to kind of take a deep breath, connect to all your experiences, all your how do you say, your learned bruises, all the shit that you got beat up and battered by life, right? And the cost of carrying the flame and walking through that fire is the walk through the fire, right? And you can't carry the flame unless you walk through the fire, right? And I said that last time, and it rings so true, right? And that's when the rubber meets the road, is when some of the stuff you've learned over a period of time, you start actually using it, right? And to wrap up the whole wisdom thing in a nutshell is start using the tools that you have. Start using the thing that you like. People give you suggestions, right, in the program, and and it's just kind of knowledge, right? There's nothing wrong with just knowledge, don't get me wrong, right? But imagine you start taking these suggestions, you start using them in your life and in your recovery, and then you start seeing the trajectory change, right? It's as simple as someone tells you stop dating, for the first year, and or at least maybe for me, the way it worked is I ran around like a little slut for the first 8 months of my recovery, year or whatever it was, and then I had to take a little hiatus. I had to stop what I was doing because I was using a person to change the way I feel, just like drugs, right? So essentially I started taking these suggestions that were given by my sponsor and started applying them in my recovery, as opposed to like I'm gonna give you all my problems and then never do anything about it, and you're going to tell me a whole bunch of suggestions. I'm just not going to ever do them, and then I'm going to come to you in a week or two crying about the same thing, right? But wisdom and sitting in wisdom and staying in wisdom, right? You start using these tools that people are suggesting, and you start realizing and seeing your worldview change, and also your immediate surroundings start getting better by some of these things you start putting into practice, right? It's never going to be a perfect system. That's not the goal here, but it's like, when you start using other people's wisdom, and then you also start using your own wisdom by, you fall down and you keep falling down, and eventually you're going to have to get to a point where, okay, maybe I'm going to stop making that same mistake. And that's when that whole, wisdom starts creeping in. You're going, oh, I'm learning from my mistakes. Wow. But, you can do what you want in your recovery. That's the beautiful thing about all this. You can you can listen to what I say, or you cannot, right? And this goes much further than just recovery. This is a spiritual walk. You don't have to be necessarily sober to be walking this walk we are on. Don't get me wrong. For most of us that are tuning into this, it's either we're struggling alcoholics or addicts, and we want to get sober, or we share a lot of the same problems, right? Um, there's not a requirement to, be all fucked up in the head on drugs just to indulge in recovery and connect with some of these spiritual principles that we walk in every single day, right? So yeah, let's move on from wisdom. I think I spent a little enough time there, and let's move on to humor. Okay, humor. Let's see what you wouldn't think it would apply, right? So humor from the dictionary, what almighty Google has to say, the quality of being amused. Our comic, especially and as expressed in literature or speech, right? A mood, a state of mind. Um, let's see. So let's see. Humor is a vital and effective tool in addiction recovery, serving as a coping mechanism that helps reduce stress, foster social connections, and provide a fresh perspective on challenges. It is often integrated in therapeutic settings and support groups to create a more relaxed and approachable environment for healing. Right? Benefits of humor in recovery: stress and anxiety reduction. Laughter lowers levels of stress hormones like cortisol and increases endorphins and dopamines, such as which helps alleviate stress, depression, and tension common during recovery. Very common. Improve social connections. Shared humor helps break down barriers, reduce feelings of isolation, and foster a sense of community and camaraderie among individuals in recovery groups, which is crucial for building strong support networks. So, enhanced coping mechanism and perspective. Humor allows individuals to step back and view challenges more objectively, making difficult situations feel more manageable. It builds emotional strength and adaptability, resilience when facing setbacks. 100%. Facilitates open communication. A lighthearted atmosphere can make clients less defensive and more willing to discuss painful and taboo subjects with counselors and peers, strengthening the therapeutic relationship and enabling deeper self reflection. Emotional healing. Humor can provide relief from pain and help individuals release tension, promoting a sense of physical and emotional well being and a positive outlook on their journey. Right? Reclaims joy. It reminds individuals that recovery isn't just about struggle, but also rediscovering joy and finding happiness in sober living, reinforcing the decision to maintain sobriety. And that's what Google has to say. And I'm going to throw my little 2 cents in there, right? So, humor is very, very important, right? In my life and in the journey I'm on in my recovery and my spiritual journey, right? It's vital, right? Most of the, you know, and most of this whole gig we do, right, is we take ourself way too serious. And I'll speak in I statements, but I know this is very relatable. I take myself a little too serious. Sometimes I know when I'm an ego is when I get very sensitive, get butt hurt, and I find myself there more often than not. I think everything should be done a certain way, and if you idiots only knew, then you would fall in line with my perspective and what I think life should be. But what humor does, right? Humor helps us get off that fucking pedestal. It helps with the humility process where it doesn't have to be humiliation, right? What humor does for me is it helps knock down that rigid character position that I like to take in all these stories that I tell, right? What humor does is it allows me, and humor is it's much deeper than just telling a joke. It's looking at life in a humorous way, right? Looking at life and being able to be amused instead of, oh my God, this person, that. It's like, okay, understand, there's nothing more funny than somebody coming up to me with their bullshit, right? And I'm just like, oh, here it is. This person's in their ego. This person's, in their struggle. And I don't want to just write everything off as like, oh, he's an ego. That's where, like, it's, this definitive statement about someone and now they're in this box. No, it's much deeper than that. They're going through their narratives in their head, the demons that they face. There's nothing more challenging than, somebody crossing your path and they're just going through it, right? And they're just trying to push it all off on you. But what I do find myself doing is letting humor in my, because what humor does, it helps disarm them, right? It helps paint them differently, and it doesn't necessarily have to be I'm gonna crack a joke and they're gonna like me. No, it's being lighthearted in spirit and in my mind, right? Being able to take it as it comes and not make a big deal about it, right? Thinking of, oh shit, like the way my mind breaks it down is like, oh, when somebody comes with a familiar problem or a familiar attitude, it's like, oh, I remember when I was there. And in my brain, the way it breaks down, I almost chuckle to myself and go, oh, yeah, I remember how hard it was. And then I almost laugh inside because the relatability makes me like when I hear something, like when a comedian's on stage or, somebody's telling their story and then they say some just ratchet shit and you're like, ew, but you laugh because you've been there. It's all about relatability, right? So I take that in even a real life like situation, and even though the person's being a total dick, and I relate myself to it and go, oh shit, I remember that, right? And there is often times when I could be the dick, so I gotta be very careful on how I treat that dick that comes through the fucking door, that asshole, right? Because one day it's gonna be me because I'm gonna not work my program the best I can, and I'm gonna be in a certain time, certain place, get some certain news, and I could snap on somebody, and it could be just a brief exchange of words, and I call someone an asshole, or I'm just not seeing things right, or I make a mistake or do something, right? And where's that grace for me, right? I can't expect grace from people when I'm in a bad way and in a bad mindset. I can't expect it at all, but let alone for sure can't expect any grace if I don't show anybody else grace, right? I got nothing coming. And it's not about like, well, if I show other people grace and it's bound to come back around. Yeah, that may happen. I'm not going to wait for it. But the true gift of showing people grace is the what it does for you, how it heals you, and understanding that I'm going to live this type of way, not because I need to meet your energy where you're at. It's because I know how I want to live and who I want to be today, and I'm going to choose to live this way, not because I have this social contract with you. Or, because some people go, well, I just meet you where you are, and they trying to sound cool. It's like, but if you show me bad energy, I'll meet you where you're at. It's like, no, no, I'm going to meet me where I'm at in every exchange that I step forward into, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And that's going to change from day to day. So what that means is just because you're an asshole to me, I don't have to be an asshole, because then I'm doing it on your terms or somebody else's terms, and it's no longer my terms. As far as I'm responsible for my attitude, my behavior. As soon as I let somebody else's attitude and behavior dictate my attitude and behavior, which can be very difficult sometimes, right? I say this, but it's not going to make it any less of a struggle when those challenging people come along. Because I had a conversation this morning in the station at my work where someone is like, yeah, it's I found myself in this bitter situation. I said, yeah, I get it. I said, but is it really are you really tested if you just deal with people you really like all day and everybody agrees with your perspective and all that? Or when it really matters is when an asshole comes in and how you treat that asshole, because it's super easy to treat everybody that you like good. That's fucking easy as pie. Everybody's treating you good, everything's clicking. Shit, that's easiest fucking song in the world. But as soon as that asshole comes in, it is the definitive moment of whether your spiritual practice is really taking hold in this world, and if you're actually being that change you want to see in the world. Because for me, it's like it's super easy to be great with everybody I like, but when the challenging time comes is when that person that I don't like comes in the picture. How am I treating them? And that's when you start noticing these spiritual shortcomings that that we all face. So today, I make a promise with myself. I'm gonna look through life through a humorous lens. I'm gonna practice being amused, right? I'm not gonna make fun of people. That's not the whole point, right? There are times where you got some good friends, best friends, I'd say, and you go crack jokes back and forth, and you just treat each other horribly, because that's what me and my friends do. We just clown on each other all day. We have fun with each other, because when you get around people that you can be yourself with, that's the most valuable thing in the world, man. Me and some really good friends, we just let loose and say, hey, I can be myself. They give you permission to be exactly who you are, and then also you do the vice versa, right? And that's not with everybody, don't get me wrong. Everything's different, right? My job is not to explain every single scenario to everybody. I'm just explaining some of my experiences with this journey of humor, and also applying it to my life, right? And in my recovery. Because when I first started, humor kept popping in my head, and I'm like, man, that's not a spiritual principle. And I said, what am I talking about? Humor has got me through very tough times. It's gotten me through deaths of loved ones. It's gotten me through, I mean, a good comedy, you throw that on, it heals the soul. You know, I've been through some tough times in my life, lost some really close people to me, best friends hanging themselves, right? Um, really good friends in recovery, ODing, losing family members. We go through life's ups and downs, and I'll tell you what, you throw on a good comedy, it does something for the soul, and it's just like a good piece of music. You're connecting to that special place, right? And laughter is the best medicine, right? Learning how to not take yourself so serious and start laughing at yourself, not in any kind of negative way, or don't use it. For me, it's like I try not to use humor in a coping mechanism that can be maladaptive, meaning I'm not going to crack a joke when things are serious. When it's time to get serious, you better believe I'm going to get down to the nitty gritty, and I'm going to take it serious, right? Don't get me wrong, there are situations where there's a good icebreaker in tense situations, right? And you got to practice your material. But on a serious note, when it's time to get raw and real, those time will come. And my recovery has taught me a good balance of how to operate in those situations, right? Because initially you wouldn't think humor off the top of the head would be like, oh, I'm going to practice the spiritual principle of humor. But for sure, like, learn to start laughing at yourself. Look at yourself in such a way, because if you can't laugh at yourself and the world around you in a loving, playful way, then that means you're just taking yourself way too serious. And that means you're caught up in ego and you're caught up in what people think. And that's a challenging place to be, right? So for people that are out there that follow this FD recovery, this flow directive recovery, and flow directive is the flow of life, the higher power that drives me, right? That's the flow, the muse, the connection to the spirit, the spiritual connection to the higher power, right? So if you're on this FD recovery train with me, I love you very much, and I appreciate all your guys' support. And if you listen to this all the way through, I appreciate it. And even if you didn't, even if you just listened to the first part, I guess you'll never hear this part anyways, so it doesn't really matter if I say this. But I love you guys, and I think that's all I have. So go out there, have a playful heart, right? Learn to crack jokes about yourself. Be kind if you're gonna crack jokes to others. Be kind and be playful and humorous in a kind way. There's plenty of ways to do that. You don't have to just say horrible, offensive jokes to be funny. But you can be lighthearted, and you can just talk about the truths of things. And sometimes that's the funniest thing, right? Is when you just talk about the truth of yourself, saying, "Hey, man, I was a fuck up for years," and you share your story, and you can learn to laugh about it. Can learn to laugh about all the harm you've done, not the actual harm to the people, but the mistakes you made along the way, right? I mean, there's so much harm that I did to myself over and over, right? Learn to laugh about that. Look at it in a playful way. Learn to open your heart in such a way that you can actually heal these pieces of you that are broken. I cannot stress it enough, right? I don't got it all figured out. That's not my plan. My plan on here in this world is not to have it all figured out. My plan is to figure enough out of it so I can live through the lens of love and live through a playful heart and not take myself so serious. So this week, I'm going to learn to not take myself so serious, learn to laugh at the broken pieces, and bring healing to those broken pieces through laughter. I love you guys, and I hope that made sense. I got off work, and I worked a decent shift, so I'm a little tired. So I love you, and work on humor this week. Have a playful heart and a playful soul. I love you guys. This is FD Recovery. Peace. Thank you for tuning in to FD Recovery. A reminder, be kind to yourself on this journey of recovery. Also, call your sponsor. Get connected to local support groups. And for one day at a time, stay clean and sober.